Today, on What Makes a Man, I've got a guest, a dear friend, a very, very successful entrepreneur, guy that I look up to in a lot of different ways, who has an amazing story from around the world. His name's Vinny Lingham. Vinny, thank you for being a guest on the show.
Jeremy, great to be here. Thank you.
It's such a pleasure. Tell me, because people look at you and they talk to you and they're like, where the hell is this guy from? Like, what does he do? Like, tell me a little bit about your background.
Okay, well, we'll start at the very beginning.
Yeah.
You know, if you couldn't tell by my accent, I'm South African born.
Yeah. Well, I now can.
You know,
but when I met you, I didn't know South African accents yet.
Okay. Okay. Well, you know, I think Elon's making it more popular.
Yeah.
But he's got a kind of a mixed one now. But
Oh, and he's very monotone too.
yeah, that is true. But anyway, so I was born in South Africa, and I grew up there, went to school there, started a company there, moved to Silicon Valley in 2008. Started a few companies out there, and
rewind. Rewind.
Okay.
I really like to start early. Like, where were your parents from? Were they also from South Africa?
Yeah. So my great grandparents came from Mauritius to South Africa.
Okay.
But you know, I think, and that was like 1900.
Yeah.
Roughly 1903, I think. And before
because you don't look like a typical South. You don't look like the white, like the European.
No, I'm Indian. I'm Indian origin.
You look
South Indian.
You have, for people that are just listening, you know, you look Indian, but and so it throws you off. But you were really several generations of South African.
I think I'm like fifth generation South African.
Wow.
Overall. On both,
interesting.
on
I
both
didn't
parents'
actually
sides.
know that about you.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you lived in South Africa in a very, very interesting time. I mean,
Yeah. I grew up during apartheid.
Yeah. Can you talk about that?
Sure.
What was because your skin's dark? Were you considered black?
Yeah. So they were like, in South Africa, you had two types of signs: whites only, non-whites only.
And you're definitely not white. Yes.
Exactly. So you know, everything from like public pools to like pretty much everything.
It's like Jim Crow South in America. Yeah.
I think probably even worse.
Yeah. Well, yes,
because it was
the level
like
of violence.
illegal.
Yeah,
It was just illegal. And so I spent most of my time. I mean, Mandela was released from prison when I was like 12. So the first 10, 12 years of my life was under the sort of apartheid regime.
Yeah.
And there weren't many things you could do. Like the public beaches were not open.
They were whites only.
Whites only, etc. We had to go down to like the rivers and stuff to just go have a good time in the weekend. I want to spend most of my time, you know, reading in libraries.
Were you from Johannesburg?
No, I was from a small town called East London.
Okay.
And the thing about the small town, or any town really, was the only place that you could go, which was public access, was libraries.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because they had censorship in place. So they could censor whatever information was there, and the only books and movies and stuff available in the library were the stuff that the government censored, and so you always could get access to censored material, including like fiction books and stories and Enid Blyton stuff, and you know, a lot of British novels and fiction. I grew up reading a lot of encyclopedias. Like the science stuff wasn't really wasn't censored because science is science. So, but anything like which was socio-political, fully censored.
Yeah, because they were scared. I mean, there have been uprisings elsewhere in the continent, and you know, kind of the whites were really trying to grasp on for control at that point.
They were trying to maintain control. I mean, control of South Africa really ended in 1987, where I think the U.S. played the strongest role in ending apartheid under Joe Biden, actually. And you know, he was one of the senators who pushed for sanctions against South Africa. And when those sanctions were implemented, South Africa's basically all American companies were forced to pull out of South Africa in '87. And that's what caused the ultimate collapse of apartheid.
And what's crazy is that, you know, going back to how I know you, it's like it started with college students. They were demanding that their universities what's it called when they take all the money out of the country?
And withdraw their
divest.
Well, no, that was across the board. So like the thing is this, like I think America was the catalyst for the apartheid falling over, because literally the sanctions that were implemented meant that all companies, IBM, pretty much every major company in South Africa had to pull out. So we had Barclays from the UK coming out. Like everyone left the country, and the economy nearly collapsed. And so the apartheid government were like, "Well, we don't have a choice. We have to
Like treat these people as equals.
Yeah, exactly. So the international community played a big role in ending apartheid. Which as at the time I was like 8 years old when this was all happening, 8 to 12. And I didn't quite grasp it. And I look back now, obviously I get what happened, but at the time I didn't understand why there were ads on TV for IBM leaving the country.
Wait, there were ads on TV for them leaving the country?
Yeah, so IBM, I remember placed an ad in the country saying, they got rebranded in South Africa. I think it was to ICL. They sold it to local people there, whatever, and they said, "Sorry, we have to leave the country. We wish you all well." Because it was crazy. It was a crazy time.
It's so weird to have companies advertising their departure from your country because you have a racist government regime.
Well, they didn't say that's why. They just kind of
no. I'm saying, but subliminally, that was the message.
Even companies like Mobil, the fuel company, right?
Yeah.
So when they pulled out, they had to rebrand to Engen in South Africa because they sold their interest locally. It was a crazy time, and all that divestment led to the fall of apartheid.
And how do you think that impacted you as a young person? One, pre the end of apartheid, being told that they're just places you can't go because of the color of your skin. What was that like?
So when you're young and you're a kid, you don't actually realize the difference. That is just the way
the world works.
Is. That's the way it is, right? You don't question these things, and your parents don't really say much because at the time, I mean, they didn't have any powers. Like we had curfew, we had to be in our homes by 7:00 every night. And people the lockdowns were funny because I'm like, it feels like apartheid again, right?
Yeah.
But it was government imposed, and you just live in a world where you kind of brainwashed to believe these things. And I was 8 years old. What do I know? I had no worldly experience. I didn't know any better.
But so did you identify with the black Africans more than you did with the whites?
No.
Because of the there had to be a separation.
No, it wasn't. So they had something called the Group Areas Act in South Africa, and that was an act of parliament, but it basically meant that Indians would stay in an Indian area, blacks would stay in a black area, whites would stay in a white area, colored people would stay in a colored area.
Okay, so you were Indian.
Colored in South Africa means half white, half black, or mix. And then you had Asian as well. So the Group Areas Act was pretty firm. You couldn't live in neighborhoods outside of your race. You couldn't date people with a different color. You couldn't get married. It was illegal. It was real apartheid.
And it's so crazy because you're a young guy. You hear these stories from the United States, but they're a few decades back. I mean,
this is fresh in my mind. I was bullied in high school because of the color of my skin, and that wasn't that long ago. And it was, South Africa was a crazy place to grow up.
Yeah, and it still is a crazy place.
I think it's changed a lot for the good and for the bad in many ways, but it's definitely a more free society than it was when I grew up.
So let's talk about how you've got Elon. You guys are around the same age, right?
Elon's about 8 years older than me, 9 years older than me.
Oh, okay. But you came into the world of tech and came to America. How did this childhood experience of living through one of the most grueling diplomatic or democratic processes that's ever happened in a country play out and lead you on your path to entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so the weird thing is I grew up in a family where my grandmother was an entrepreneur. She had a fruit and vegetable shop, very basic, simple thing, but it kind of paid.
But she ran her own business.
She had her own business, and then my dad did the same thing, and my mom did the same thing, and they ran their own small businesses there. They were able to, and by the time apartheid ended, my parents' business started doing really well, and the economy came right, and they flourished in my teenage years. So I got to work in the business. I got to learn a lot about how to run your own business, and I always never.
Well, and I bet a lot of domestic businesses did better once all the businesses pulled out due to.
Well, no, I think it only turned around after Mandela was released from prison.
Okay.
Because then investment came into the country.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it was reversal. So that was I think my parents' business did really well in the 90s.
Okay.
So the turnover of the changing of the guard, so to speak. And so that was when I learned a lot about entrepreneurship. So I used to work as a kid growing up. I would work from the age of like 9 or 10 in my parents' shop, and up until the age of like 18, I worked. And my teenage years, every Saturday and Sunday, every weekend, I would say 40 to 45 weekends a year, I'd be working. And they pay me, so I didn't pocket money. And the kids at school always were like, "You just have a lot of money, you're a rich kid." I'm like, "No, you don't understand. I get paid my $3 an hour for grinding away 8 hours a day on a Saturday and Sunday." And when in South Africa you could drink at a young age, there's no the laws aren't that strict. So at the age of like 14, 15, we used to go out to like nightclubs, have a couple of beers. The drinking age is 18, so just for comparison. So everyone starts to feel the same.
It's fun there. I spent some time. Yeah.
So I was always the guy who had tons of money for alcohol. So when the weekends come, Saturday night, I'd spent the weekend working, or at least Saturday working. I had $50 on me, and we got and had drinks, and my friends and I were just like. I grew up always feeling good about having money that I earned myself.
Yeah.
And I was able to spend it, and I never really saved it. I just spent it and had a good time.
Yeah, but did it make you want to do more? What?
Yeah.
Well, what brought you to the United States? Because I don't know how you made that jump.
Sure. So perspective here. When I was like in apartheid, the only thing I could actually get a hold of was books on, computer science, for example, and programming. So I taught myself to program at a very young age, like I think 8 or 9. I had like a ZX Spectrum, a Commodore 64. So I was really into computers. And the other thing I was passionate about is movies. So I watched a ton of Hollywood movies. And, actually funny, I watched a bit of like Bollywood stuff as well and some other different things. But like the Hollywood movies always just enamored me, right? It was
they were the best.
Right? And I was like, I want to move to California one day. And my whole like shtick as a kid growing up was I want to live in America. And I figured like learning computers and, seeing what Bill Gates was doing was exciting and interesting. And so I went to go study computers at university, information systems. And I did really well. And, it's one of those things where I just had an affinity to being in technology. And so the .com boom was happening. I built like a little tech company on the side, kind of sold it to another company in Johannesburg, but it was very small. It wasn't a company. It was,
so let's pinpoint this. Is it 2000?
It's 2000. So in like April 2000, before the bubble burst, I had some code. I hired some developers to build, and I kind of flipped it. Not for much money, but I got to work in a corporate in Johannesburg.
But you had an exit.
Yeah, I had a small exit. It was kind of cool. And then I worked there, and then the market tanked. Post.com era happened. No one believed in internet in South Africa. I was one of the only people who actually think there was still a future in the internet, because it was very slow back then.
Right. It was
dial-up,
very slow.
It was super slow.
And then the bubble burst.
The bubble burst. And then I started working in the online gaming world. I did a couple other things, but the online gaming world was interesting. So online casinos back in the days, they were based in South Africa. And I worked for them, and I started learning about search engine marketing. And then that was before Google even launched, Google search engine AdWords. It was like back in the Overture days. So I did a bunch of work there. I traveled to the States back and forth, loved it, came to California. I went to the Search Engine Strategies conferences, became a circuit speaker for many years.
How did you get your visa?
I had a business visa back then, so just a business travel visa back and forth. And then I started a company in South Africa, Clicks to Customers. It's still one of the largest search marketing companies. I think it's one of the largest independent ones in the world. I just did a lot of conferencing back in those days. I was in Boston, Chicago, New York. I was speaking at all the conferences. I became a search engine marketing expert back in those days when it was like, and we were one of the biggest companies doing this stuff at the time. And Walmart was our client, Walmart.com. So we ran all of Walmart search for like 5 years out of Cape Town. We're talking like 50 million keyword campaigns back in the days before big data was big data.
So where did you develop the skills to do that?
I taught myself. I learned. I hired people. I built a company out of it.
And they were all in South Africa?
All in Cape Town, yeah.
Amazing.
But do you know that Amazon EC2 was built out of Cape Town?
I think I learned that when I was in Cape Town. Yeah.
So Amazon Web Services was actually developed. It was founded by 2 South Africans and built out of the Cape Town. And Amazon maintains quite a big engineering team in Cape Town.
Yeah, I did. I mean, the corporate presence there is remarkable.
Yeah.
I mean, I've spent a good amount of time in Africa, and South Africa, it's got a lot going for it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I learned. I learned a lot of interesting things about search engines and Google in particular. I figured out some ways to. Back in the early days, the Google algorithm wasn't that sophisticated, so
You could kind of game it.
we kind of gamed it, and we reverse engineered it. I figured out how to do a whole bunch of really cool things with it, and so we did really well on ads and yeah, it was a good business, but it wasn't really my long term passion. So I wanted to be in the US, and so I spun off a little project internally we were working on, which was a SaaS website building platform. And I raised some funding for it, and I managed to move to the States. And that was 2008.
Okay, and so you come to the States, you go to San Francisco?
Yeah, that was the only place to go.
Yeah.
I arrived here, and I was here for like 6 months, and then the financial crisis hit. And that was like the craziest time ever, as you can imagine. Like San Francisco went dead. Everything was just like gone within a few weeks or months. Like, and now, like, it was kind of depressing time. 2009 was depressing.
What we like to talk about this on the show. Was that rock bottom? Was that the low point
For me or
for your career?
No,
for your
not at
life?
all. Not at all. I mean, so it's kind of funny because like at the end of 2018, I'd actually got a term sheet to raise more money, which I signed and got done. The terms were terrible, but I took it, and we had enough capital to last a couple of years. But we were fine, and we just kept building the company and whatnot. So there was
You went from aspiring to be a unicorn to a cockroach, as they say.
Yeah. It was okay. It was an interesting time. I think for me, that was a really good time to meet and hang out with other entrepreneurs in the Bay Area that still believed in tech and where it was going and where the world is going. Because if you contrast that to now, the Bay Area is very different in terms of like when everything collapses, like the same thing happens in the crypto bubbles and the bust, right? When everything collapses, the only people left behind are the ones that really care about the industry.
The passion.
Passion is there, and the people who are just kind of there for the money disappear.
Yeah.
And this happens every cycle in crypto. Like the moment shit gets tough, the people who're just there for the money leave, and everyone else who wants to be there stays behind. And the next cycle, those people are the ones who are thriving, right? And so you got to stick it out through the ups and downs of every cycle, whether it's a real estate bubble, bust, tech, crypto, it doesn't matter. Same thing in price.
And so you said you came to the U.S. in 2008?
Mm-hmm.
And now, did you, when did you discover Bitcoin?
So my next company I started was a company called Gift in 2012.
Right.
Now, in 2012, mobile just taken off.
And your startup before that, did you exit that?
Oh, I left it. The moment I kind of got to the point where it wasn't, a number of factors just basically made me want to leave because the company kind of pivoted into an area I didn't want to be in for good reason. And it's more of an enterprise solution as opposed to a consumer platform. I'm a consumer guy.
Yeah.
So
and you like people.
I like people and I like consumer products. And when things go into the enterprise realm, I tend to say, well, I'm not the best person to run this thing, and I'll hand it over. And so when I started Gift, I'm like, this is great. It's a consumer platform, and the inspiration for Gift was I was in 2011 downstairs from my startup. There was a Starbucks, and I kept walking in there, and then they released the Starbucks gift card app, and the Starbucks card and app. I was like, this is cool.
One of the most popular apps in the world.
Exactly. I'm like, this is cool.
To this day.
Exactly. But we need this for other businesses as well. And so I looked at it and I said, okay, how can we redesign this in a way that other companies can use it, whether it's Dunkin' Donuts or even Starbucks or Walmart or whatever, and basically came up with the concept for Gift, which was a mobile gift card application. Started building that in 2012, raised some VC and seed money, and we launched the TechCrunch later that year. And it was a really cool concept. I mean, the wallet looked good. You could upload your old gift cards. You could buy gift cards. But after the first month, we did $30,000 in sales and not much more for the rest of the next 6 months until so around about 6 months after launch, this thing was going nowhere.
And this is
2013. So in 2013 March, I remember very clearly. I'm like, I think we're going to shut this thing down because no one wants to. There's no use case for this. People aren't buying gift cards on mobile. It doesn't seem to be working. And the other problem we had is we had our credit card filters set really high because we in the beginning we had lots of people trying to buy them, but they were all fraudsters trying to use stolen credit cards on our platform. Yeah. And so we had to basically just decline. And the ones we didn't decline, we got charged back on, and that just is not a good thing to have. So I was chatting to a friend of mine, and he was like, "Well, have you looked at Bitcoin?" I'm like, "Yeah, I looked at it. I kind of heard of it before." I'm like, "Who's using it?" And he said, "No, check it out." So I was like, "This is interesting." So I bought some Bitcoin at like $40, and I started using it, and this is really cool. And then I started chatting to the guys at BitPay, and said, "Okay, can we put BitPay into Gift?" And we worked it out. We managed to get it done, and we did a press release saying you can now spend Bitcoin at 55,000 stores across the country. And the premise is very simple. You could walk into a store, and you could transfer your Bitcoin, pay the invoice on your phone for the say you walk into Target. So we had Target gift cards in the app. You could pay for $100 Target card with at that point that was one Bitcoin. So you transfer one Bitcoin across, you get $100 gift card in literally 2 seconds, and you can spend it at the point of sale. So people were using our app. Like the Bitcoin community went crazy over Gift. At one point, we were 5% of all Bitcoin blockchain transactions in a day.
That's when I came into the industry, late 2013, early 2014.
Because
you were a rock star.
Yeah,
I was so enamored when I met you because you were the coolest guy.
No, like all we were doing is we were allowing people an off ramp to spend their Bitcoin. Because back then you didn't have lots of exchanges, you didn't have lots of ways of spending your Bitcoin, and like the exchanges didn't have the ability to go to like your bank account. Like Coinbase today, you can direct deposit your bank account. That wasn't available back in 2013. No. So that was very powerful, and we basically became a huge, I think, Bitcoin conduit. A couple of things changed with Bitcoin, but in 2014, we sold the company, and we sold the company not on the basis of our Bitcoin sales going through the roof. It was on the basis of like those people, when they didn't buy with Bitcoin, they would also just use it with a credit card. So we launched a rewards program and a whole bunch of things, and we just had, like at the time, by the time I left the company, it was hundreds of millions of dollars worth of sales.
Yeah.
Like going through the platform.
It just exploded.
It exploded. And at the time I left, like it was way more credit card than gift card than Bitcoin. But Bitcoin was the catalyst to make the whole thing take off.
Which is so crazy. And it's only the sort of thing you can appreciate when you zoom out.
Yeah, exactly.
In that moment, you're just wrapping your head around everything.
It was crazy. It was, and in today's terms, those Bitcoins are worth, I mean, we're talking crazy numbers of Bitcoin. But
Bitcoin wouldn't be where it was if it didn't have those use cases.
Yeah, and that's where, like, when the scaling wars came into play, like one of the things I thought about was, even in 2015, like RBF, for those who aren't technical, is basically like the ability to issue a gift card instantly was because we used something called zero conf, and we could just accept Bitcoins and trust them, and we'd issue a $100 gift card, and no one would double spend. And over time, that functionality disappeared from Bitcoin because they put in something called replace by fee, which made it difficult to do, etc. And so Bitcoin evolved from the digital currency narrative.
Yeah, the peer-to-peer electronic cash system.
That was the original sort of thesis behind Bitcoin to what it is today, which is this digital gold.
Yeah.
And like it's kind of like, well, let's see where it goes. But like it was very useful as a currency. Today,
and e-commerce back then was plagued by a lot of issues that Bitcoin was trying to solve.
And it solved. Merchants were all accepting Bitcoin. Expedia everyone was accepting Bitcoin.
And you guys were at the peak, and I remembered, like, you gave us, when you sold Gift, which was after I knew you, but it was in 2014, right?
Yeah, 2014.
Yeah. Because I met you at Money 2020, and you sold it right after that,
or just before that.
Just before that, yeah. But like that was this big win for the industry.
Yeah,
because it's like I was having cognitive dissonance though, because I was looking at Bitcoin and I was like, I don't think this is going to be great for payments. Like I think
it's great for payments.
I think this technology is going to be great for payments. But I think looking at the way that Bitcoin was being used and how I was like, I don't think this is going to be the cryptocurrency that does that. I think that Bitcoin's going to be the kind of gold standard, but I didn't see it. And then you sold Gift, and it was like, we saw you as a Bitcoiner. We saw you like Gift as a Bitcoin company. Like
it was.
And to see a $50 million exit, like oh my God, that was such a win for the whole industry.
Yeah, it was great.
Everyone was elated, and
we were a big advertiser. We were advertising like back in the days. Like I can't even tell you the stories. How many? Like there's so many companies today that we paid a lot of Bitcoin to, who literally at the time I gave them money, like I think one's a multi-billion-dollar company. They were on like literally out of money that week, and I was like, here's a couple $100,000, whatever, and we'll do a sponsorship deal. Keep going, send us your traffic. I did that with a number of companies. And so like in the industry, we were a big advertiser, Reddit as well, if you remember that. So we actually contributed a lot to the industry in terms of just awareness of Bitcoin and driving adoption of Bitcoin in those early days.
Yeah, and there was this like momentum. It was probably in the entire time I've been in crypto, the most authentic period because everyone that was there, you know, Bitcoin had crashed at that point,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right.
We weren't there for the money. There wasn't
yeah,
any money.
Yeah,
The industry was tiny.
Bitcoin had gone from $1,000 to 200. Charlie, who we had yesterday, was in jail.
Yeah.
Like like it was like we needed these small little wins
yeah.
to keep going, and that was it. And I remember Overstock accepting Bitcoin, and it was a big deal. And what's interesting to me is how we evolved. We became blockchain technology. Yeah. We built something that's much more than just payments, and you've evolved along with that. I mean, you then went on and built Civic.
Yeah.
I mean, that was your next venture, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So Civic was it was a point to where as I was leaving Gift, one of the things I realized was identity was a big problem, and could you use the Bitcoin blockchain to create an identity credential sort of network. And that's what we've been building for like 5 years and trying to build it. It's slow, it's difficult. I mean, we've had scaling issues. We did smart contracts on Ethereum. Ethereum scaling issues hit us again. So we went through Bitcoin scaling problems, then we went to Ethereum scaling problems. We're now moving to Solana. And it's just been so it's been a very difficult period for us to build infrastructure up to now. But I think it's getting to the point now where identity is becoming critical because governments are stepping in, regulations are stepping in, even for decentralized exchanges and DeFi. All that's coming, and so we've built infrastructure for years. We've got millions of lines of code around ID verification, and so it's just about applying it to the right industry. And I think we're doing a really good job of like building future proofing the systems so that privacy is built in natively. Like one of the things about Civic is we always wanted to have people in control of their own identity information and privacy, and so that was the key sort of founding principle of the company. And so now allowing them to use those credentials to do all these things is what we're focused on.
This is something I want to dive deeper into because, Gift, when did you found it?
2012.
So you sold that in 2 years for a big exit.
Yeah, 2.5 years. I mean, we made, we took in like $5 million capital. We made over 10x return in 2 years. Investors were super happy.
Yeah, everyone was happy.
Back in those days, 10x was a big deal.
Yeah, very big deal in cash.
Yeah, cash on cash returns. Yeah.
So, that was that your first big win as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, that was my first big win.
And so, and it happened quickly. And then you went to Civic, and I was an investor. At Blockchain Capital. Early on, I was pushing them on the Ethereum, on the non-Bitcoin side of things because I had just done the Augur ICO, and I looked.
It's worth pointing out. I also did a couple other things around by that time. I set up a VC fund in South Africa in Cape Town called Newtown Partners. We currently manage a fund for Imperial Logistics, so it's a logistics investment VC fund. So I'm a partner at that fund, which it's about 20 million right now. It's doing really decently. Small fund. And then the other thing I did in 2017 was I joined Multicoin as a general partner as they were starting up. And so worked with Carl and Tashara to bring capital in.
Right, you became a hedge funder.
Yeah, exactly. So brought in capital, we launched the venture fund. And disclosure, I led the deal on Solana, so that's why.
Oh, I appreciate you giving the disclosure.
Civic and Solana are pretty close, and I'm a big fan of Solana. One of the early supporters of Solana.
I met the Solana guys at a dinner. It was a deal I passed on. I was just like, oh, we don't need another fucking blockchain. Because that's when everybody was had an Ethereum killer. But what I want to get to is your perseverance, because as a founder and as a venture capitalist and angel investor, the greatest challenge for entrepreneurs, whether they've had a taste of success like you and I have, and especially when it comes quickly in our cases, is the temptation to walk away when things get tough, when it becomes more grueling and challenging, because civic,
Oh, yeah.
it's been a challenge.
Yeah, we had a stupid class action lawsuit was finally dismissed like 2 months ago. That was painful.
Someone trying to take off of the ICOs and securities laws.
all that
Yeah,
stupid
yeah.
stuff. It got dismissed, which
Yeah.
is fine. But like, we had to deal with all this stuff over the years. It is a challenge. I mean, I will say that my sort of philosophy has always been you never want to leave a company or hand it over in the worst times.
Right. You want to hand it over in the best.
In best times, or even like on the up and up,
Yeah.
not on the downswing.
Yeah.
So no matter how bad things get, I'd be there, like making sure things.
Yeah,
don't fall
the
apart.
captain should go down with the ship.
Yeah, I'd rather, and I'd say like in all my companies, we've been there at least more than once, and I've been with like 5-6 companies.
Yeah.
Where like, oh shit, we're gonna shut this thing down. It's
Yeah.
not gonna work. And every company I've been involved in, at some point there's this like reckoning where the founders are like, this is not working, we shut it down, and those are the times where you have to push through, because there's only two outcomes. One is this thing fails, in which case you'll have a very quick answer if you're at that point, or it's gonna maybe succeed, and then that may take longer. But it's easier to get to a quick yes, we're gonna fail, than it is to get it to no, we're not sure, or an unsure mark. And I'd rather like hang around for those extra month or 2 months or 3 months and just like make sure that it's gonna fail or not. It's kind of a weird way of thinking about things, but like leaving at the point where you think it's gonna fail, it's better just to finish it and fail and shut down. And I haven't actually gotten there yet, so that's a good thing, but gotten very close to a number of
No, but that's the thing, especially when you're talking about crypto stuff. It's just like, there's so many moving parts. Like the entire infrastructure that you're built on sometimes has to change, as in your case.
And like also listening to other people's opinions, like from who are outside the company and outside. Like one of the other like big mistakes you can make is get tainted by other people's thoughts. And as an investor, this happens. Like how many times have you passed on a deal because someone told you the team is like terrible, or the code's bad, or the thing's gonna fail, and then they wind up like blowing out of the park?
I mean, yes,
Do you know
too many times.
Too many times. Like you just gotta like go.
Well, and that's my fault for not being a coder. But god damn it, yes.
It's not even about being a coder. It's about like appreciating that you got to invest in people and not
Right.
all the other stuff. And
Right,
then, and you back the people.
and that's and frankly, I actually feel incredibly grateful because there are only a few big misses in my investing career, but the couple that I've had have been where I haven't followed my conviction in the people.
Yeah.
And as long as
Exactly.
the people
Yeah.
are someone you want to invest in, it really doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. So that's what I found. I like my investment strategy is basically people. Like when I met like Anatoly from Solana, I'm like, I've got to invest in this guy. He's a genius. Like,
Yeah.
Even like Juan from Protocol Labs
Yeah.
back in 2014. Like one of the things which is also, I guess, a good part of the gift exit was that when I had X, I invested money. I had money to invest, so I put money behind lots of crypto companies. And lots of at a very bad point in time in 2014, no one was writing checks to these guys, right? So I was there, I just had an exit, and I was like, hey, okay, Juan, I'm investing in Protocol Labs, let's go. And many others, right? So I did a lot of investing back in those days in early stage, and a lot of these companies have done really well over the years. But like I invested in the people. I didn't really care what they were doing. It's like I like you, I like the general idea. Maybe it'll change, maybe it won't. And in most cases, it turned out really well for me.
Yeah, and this is something I found as an angel more, is that when I am investing in the people, they're all still around. Like they're all still around.
Yeah.
They're all still doing great things, and they've all made sure that I'm a part of it in some way.
Exactly.
And that's
And along the way, like the other thing is when you invest in these people, along the way, you'll have people tell you that they're not doing their job, it's not going well, things are going to fall over. I mean,
no, you have to be so steadfast.
You have to be steadfast. You say, you know what, I have conviction for the person.
Yeah.
I don't care about your opinions. Hey, you know what? You may be right. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I've already put my money behind them, and I'm going to back them up.
Well, and there's so many times where you'll hear like someone say that, and then you find out that they couldn't get into the company's last round, and that's why they said it. People can be petty, but were there any points, either before gift or in the past, call it 7 years I've known you, where you're just like at this low point where you didn't want to do what you were doing anymore?
It's been, it's been a journey. I'd say, I mean, I don't think there's any founder with any startup that can say like
It's been perfect.
it's been perfect the whole time.
Yeah.
Like even with Civic, I mean, we've had down days, we've had down weeks, down months. We're like, oh, this is.
Yeah.
We've had like when we started building the wallet app for the crypto.
Yeah.
It was 25 cents a wallet on Ethereum for gas.
Yeah.
By the time we shut it down and disabled Ethereum ERC20 tokens, it was 250 to 500 a wallet just to onboard a new user. Like, do you know how depressing that is when you spend like a year and a half or 2 years building this wallet infrastructure and then the gas fees are just too high?
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Literally, the platforms you're building on are super nascent and unpredictable.
Exactly.
Decentralization, baby.
Exactly. Well, there's a cost.
Yeah.
And so you got to find the happy medium. I think, but in every company I've been in, there's always been a point where you're down, and that's the founder.
And so, I look at you as one of the entrepreneurs I really admire most, because you have a certain consistency though. Like the entire time I've known you, one, you've had the same wife, and I'd love to get into that, but and you're a father, but you really are pretty steadfast in your attitude. Like I think we've seen a lot of this in crypto. People go through massive changes in who they are and their like sense of self and like the way they behave, and I see a lot of myself in you, and that we've been pretty consistent ever since I met you. Where do you derive that from? That consistency?
I think I'm just very like stoic. I mean, people who know me now and people who know me since a kid and know me today, like they laugh that you're still the same guy.
That is what I always say. Yeah,
you haven't changed. Like I haven't changed in years, and in fact, I probably haven't changed in 30 years.
Do you think you're the first person that's ever said that? I say that about myself because you asked my childhood friends who nobody had any expectations of me, and they all say the same thing. It's like, yeah, we didn't think he'd do what he's doing, but he's still exactly the same person. Yeah. And do you think that like stoicism is almost innate? Because I read Ryan Holiday. I love the way he distills stoicism, and I make all my employees read his books, and when I look at stoicism, I'm like, this is just something that was always inside of me, that steadfastness.
Yeah, it's. I think it's innate. I don't think I learned it or anything or picked it up. It's just who I am.
Yeah, and it's such an interesting question.
Well, the thing is, it's like when you have like a good moral compass, and like things work out in your life, well, and you kind of. Like,
you manifest.
You manifest
and you identify the serendipity.
You don't want to change anything. You're like, it just works for me. I don't want to change anything. My life's good. Like everything's fine.
So this is where I could use help, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. Tell me about your relationship with your wife, because Charlie Shrem and you have probably my two favorite marriages that I've ever seen. Like really just marriages that I'm like, wow, that's something I could really want in my life. And it's not something I saw earlier in my life. I was totally against monogamy or anything that resembled like marriage when growing up. And I've gotten to the point where like having a significant other is compelling to me. Can you just tell me a bit about your relationship and how you make it work in a way that's it's like not NC-17?
We're like best friends. I mean, basically, we've been together for over 20 years. And
where did you meet?
In South Africa. We met online.
Really? Yeah. Where online? It was like a South African dating app?
oneandonly.com, which is like a maps.com site, whatever. And we just like, this is random. I was living in Johannesburg at the time.
So wait, this is 2001 online dating.
2000.
Wow, that's some really OG online dating.
Yeah. So,
wow.
We're probably the longest running couple from Match.com. But it's been great. I mean, we like when you get to the point with someone, you're just like super comfortable with someone, and like they understand you, and support goes both ways. You can build a very successful, partnership in life together.
Well, and that's how I see you guys. You're really not just like romantic partners.
Yeah.
You are like life partners.
Life partners, exactly.
you met your wife 20 years ago online in
Mm-hmm.
South Africa, 7 years before you came to America.
Yep.
Did she come to the US with you?
Yeah. We moved together.
Did she drive your growth as a person?
Absolutely. I mean, we're actually having this conversation in the car today. Like, I spent more time with her than I did with my parents growing up as a kid. Wow. Think about it. Like, we've been together longer than I stayed in my home. And I spent more time with her than any person on this planet. So, like, you know, we're inextricably linked. Like, we are a function of each other. And so my success is her success is my success. Like, you know, when you spend that much time with one person, they always say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? So, like, the number one person on the list would be her, and number one person on her list would be me. So,
she's the most important variable.
Exactly.
And so, thinking about that, I mean, like, what does it take to stay together like that and be that, like, bond on so many different levels?
So, people ask me for relationship advice a lot, as you can imagine.
I mean, you guys have an aspirational relationship.
So what I will say with that is, when you meet someone and you're trying to figure out whether they're the right person for you, I believe, and I think it's probably more true than not that shared values is the most important thing. If you meet a partner, so, that is romantically fun and you want to be with on that level, but you guys don't share the same values as people, it's never going to last. But the moment you share the same values, you want the same things in life, you believe the same things. And I really mean it, like, when I say values, I mean, how do you treat other people? How do you think about raising kids? How do you think about having kids? How do you think about relationships with other people? How do you think about, like, honestly, a lot of it is going to do with, like, how do you treat other people, and how do you engage with the rest of the world? And some people are evasive, effusive, obtuse. Some people, like, are direct. Some people are, like, they like being very fake in person, and then, or sorry, fake behind your back, or vice versa, right? So, like some people are just genuine, or they think they're genuine, but they're not really. And some people are authentic, but then they, it's how do you find someone that shares the same values? Like, with me, what you see is what you get. I'm a very direct guy, straight up, tell you how I feel, how I think. No one ever goes and says, well, Vinny's like, like this to this person and that to another person. Like, I'm consistent. If you ask people opinion on me, most people will give you exactly the same version of me, maybe some variances here and there, but that's it. And so I try to be very authentic as a person. And if I think I was with someone who wasn't authentic, that would be a problem. If I was with someone who, is all, like, fun and, like, prancing around and excitable, and then, but then, like, oh, I hate that guy. Why was, like, why was he at your event? Or I don't like speaking to her. Like, we try to be very genuine. You kind of know where you stand with me. And so she's the same. Like, we try to be genuine people. And so it goes back to the point. It's like, you want to find someone who shares those values. Like, I value authenticity and being genuine a lot, and therefore I wanted someone who was the same and valued it as well.
Honestly, of all the interviews we've done so far, you gave me the most to think about. I mean, I think we have so much more we could talk about, but I do want to be respectful of your time. Have to cut this one short today, but you have to promise me you're going to come back. It doesn't have to be tomorrow. It can be a year from now, but we have to do round two.
We'll do this again, Jeremy.
All right. Vinny, thank you so much for your time. This was a fascinating conversation. I really want to go deeper into your early life, but this was amazing.
Awesome. Thanks, man.